ensure that the economic condition of a student does not become a barrier in his or her education?
You know, there's not a single answer to this. There are many aspects to that answer. One part would be actually to expand the education system, to create many more schools and colleges and technical institutions, to make them affordable, which means in many cases you know there can be private education, but government in our country has a very important role in making education affordable and accessible. That's one. Second, I would say in many cases, depending on which level we are talking about, to give the support, to give the scholarships. Because if you look today, even in developed countries, there is, for talented students, there is a big scholarship scheme. Many people go to study on that. Third, I would say, if for those who can take loan from banks, etc., to make that easier. But for those who come from underprivileged background, there has to be a recognition, you know, of that. And, you know, that is why for many years we've had the practice of reservation. That reservation is justified because that is the way of creating a level playing field. In a way, I would say it's a kind of mix of all of this. But overall today, it's very, very important to just increase the number of educational institutions in this country. Because if you look at the 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s even, there were, you know, you look how many IITs, how many IIMs, even how many schools, how many colleges, how many universities. I mean, India's growth rate in last 30 years is like this. If you look at education growth rate, it is like this. So, we have put great emphasis in actually increasing the number of even colleges. You know, in the last 10 years, almost 7,000 new colleges have come up in this country. 7,000 new colleges means every day 2 new colleges are coming up. 370 new universities have come up. So I'm citing this. That is in itself not enough, because one is to create more seats, but you have to finance, access, encourage, reserve seats for that to happen.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Next question.
Good evening, Honorable Minister, sir. So we had a very good relationship with Nepal. But right now, as we see, it is more influenced by China. And Nepal is backlashing India. Sir, my question is, what are your thoughts on this? And how do you see India's position in the world in next 10 or 20 years? Thank you.
If I understood your question, you said we had very good ties with Nepal, but now you are suggesting they are not so good.
It is more influenced with China now. Military practices and political meetings.
Okay. See, you are all young people. My first advice to you is don't believe everything you read in the press. In fact, do heavy discounting. Because suppose the press guy writes a story. India had good relations with Nepal. India still has good relations with Nepal. Nobody will publish that story. So they have to write a story saying things are not going so well. So, right now, our relations with Nepal good. I give you 4 or 5 examples. I was in Nepal in January this year. Okay. I remember the first time I went to Nepal. This was in 2015. So we are talking 10 years. 10 years ago, Nepal used to get its petrol in trucks, truck by truck from India across the border. So they used to use petrol to get petrol because it was a most inefficient way of getting petrol. The cost of petrol also went up. There would be petrol shortages in that country. Today, there is a pipeline from a refinery in India which supplies petrol to Nepal. Whose refinery? Ours. Who built the pipeline? Us. One example. Example 2. My first memory of that visit, we had long power breakdown. Okay? Now, okay, we have power breakdowns in India also, but you all know that is less and less now. Sometimes you can go whole days, whole weeks, whole months without a power breakdown. Used to have regularly that. Today, power situation, very different. Why is it different? Because a grid was built from India to Nepal, carrying electricity from India to Nepal. In fact, it worked out so well, the same grid, Nepal is producing electricity and selling power to India and making money out of it. Now, if you travel by road, the roads have changed, the checkpoints have become much better. There is today a railway connection much deeper into Nepal than there has ever been. So, imagine if your power has changed, your petrol has changed, your rail has changed, your road has changed, your border checkpoints have changed, the amount of trade you do has changed. Why would anybody say relations have become more difficult? In fact, if you take all this, compare what Nepal does with India, with any neighbor of, or any country, why neighbor? Any country that Nepal, how much does Nepal trade with other countries, how much does Nepal trade with India? Do the comparison. Don't listen to me. Check it out. You will get a very different answer than your question suggested.
Thank you, sir. Next question.
Good evening, sir. I'm Navita Nathan, and my question to you is that what are some changes, what are some plans in the pipeline of your government for the youth of India in the third term?
You know, we have a number of, I would say, initiatives, suggestions, some of which we've already started, some of which will be built up, intensified more. We definitely want, the first point I made to the gentleman there, how to increase educational access, educational institutions. Not only education, but skill. We want to create more skill institutions because we want people to go to an institution and be ready to work thereafter. So education and skill will get a lot of funding, a lot of priority, a lot of push. That is number one. Number two, we want to grow the startup culture in this country. We want young people to have access, to be confident if they have a good idea, what to do with that idea, how to make that idea into a business. So even the idea of loans, that we have this big scheme called Mudra loan. We want to actually increase the amount under the Mudra loan. We want to fund people. Now, it depends on what kind of young people you are talking. Now, sometimes you have young people who are already working. People who are working in shops, people you may be seeing who are selling things on the street. Now, all these people borrow money at very, very high rates. And this is very tough on them. Now, we have a scheme called Swanidhi, where these people who are today running their own businesses, however small, even somebody with a cart, how do you give them money at much cheaper rates so that they are able to actually run their businesses? See, in this country, we have government employment, we have private employment, and we have self-employment. What the government is trying to do is to make sure government employment is, because what our experience is, you may have a job, but nobody is filling the job. Many vacant jobs in the government. How do you fill all the government jobs? How do you grow the business so that there are more private sector business created jobs in the country? And how do you support people who will actually increase the self-employment side? Because there is a very big segment. if you go around most countries in the world, self-employment is a very big part of employment, and we need to grow that in this country as well.
Thank you so much, sir. The next question.
A very good afternoon, sir. Sir, you have been very successful as a diplomat, and now also you are also very successful as a foreign minister. So, sir, what's the mantra behind your success that we students can learn?
Well, I don't know if I can tell you that there's any secret, single formula or anything. I can only say 2-3 things from my own experience. One, if you study something or if you work on something which interests you, you will do well. And I say this from my own experience. I don't recommend my experience to other people, okay? I mean, everybody has their own experience, but I was initially a science student. I switched my stream, and I was much more interested in the social science, in the political science, international stream. The moment I got more interested, actually my performance became better. Following on that, by passing UPSC, joining the Foreign Service, I actually got to work on a subject in which I had an interest. So, study in a subject on which you have interest. If you work on a subject on which you have interest, I think that also makes a big difference. I was lucky that in my initial years, I found people who took interest in you, who kind of encouraged you, helped you. I try to pass it on now to younger people as well. So having a good mentor or set of mentors, I think that is a great blessing. We should never forget mentors, never forget people. To some extent, I would say also to have a good peer group, that when I look at my friends and the people with whom at different points of time I feel all of us helped each other. I mean, we were all about the same age, where many of us sort of grew in that job or in that line of work together. And to some extent, for me, because this is as a diplomat, and in a way, politics and diplomacy have something to do with each other. See, they are both very people-centric. In diplomacy, in politics, it's very important to have relationships. If I were to say you and I have a meeting, I will make sure I know as much about you as possible. I want to click in that meeting. I want this, that how to build chemistry with people. It's something you learn. But all these other factors help you actually go in that direction. So when I moved, because I did almost 40 years in one stream. After 40 years, it's not so easy to adjust to something else. Partly I adjusted to politics because, as I said, it's also a very people-centered profession. But I was also, like I said, people helped you. In politics, other ministers, including especially Prime Minister, they knew I was new to politics. They made a very special effort to try and make you comfortable, to teach you really how politics works. They kind of, I don't want to say handheld you, but in a kind of way that is true.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, I have a question for you, something related to this, but I'm not asking you for the mantra. Which role do you enjoy more? I mean, which role did you enjoy, as a diplomat or as a politician now? Which is more interesting?
So the question, for those of you, if you didn't hear it, is which role do I enjoy more, as a diplomat or as a politician? I think, you grow from one to the other. In my case, I can't today as a politician say I would like to be a diplomat. I still am part diplomat. Yes, you use diplomacy in politics. But I would say this, for me, these 5 years in politics, actually, I have one more mantra. You can always learn whatever, however old you are or however young you are. Because I tell people, I still learn new things. I learn new things because as a politician, I go and meet a much broader section of people than I would if I was a diplomat. And many of them know things, have done things, have problems, have solutions which I don't. The second, when I say you can never stop learning, especially when it comes to technology. You know, most people my age, we look at our children, sometimes even grandchildren, for solutions. So age and smartness have nothing to do with each other. So I say this to all of you as well. So, you know, keep learning. Never reach that stage where you've turned off that switch. It's very important to keep it going, and I've kept learning as a politician in these 5 years.
Thank you so much, sir. The next. Yes, sir. So,
Good afternoon.
There's only one mic.
Good afternoon, sir.
Give it to the photographer, he'll hand it up.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Good evening, sir. My question to you is, what measures is India going to take in order to counter China's imperialistic?
Let me get the other question as well.
Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. I want to take off from that question on education. We need to demolicize or whatever it's called, our education system, because it's still, Macaulay's things are still flowing here. And I think we've done an excellent job of introducing IKS or BKS, better still, at the college level. Are we filtering it down to school level as well? Question one. Question two, our knowledge available in our own systems has already shown tremendous skills, strengths in areas of science, medicine, mathematics, everything. Is there any work being done to find out if there's some similar things available for newer technologies like AI or other new upcoming technologies? Is somebody working or is being encouraged to work on Vedas, related Vedangas, etc., to find out if we already have this knowledge available?
So, thank you. Let me respond first to the China question. See, China is our biggest neighbor, and what makes our two countries very different is we are the only two countries which have more than 1 billion people. We are also among the old civilizations of the world. We are very few of the old civilizations who even today continue as a modern nation state of great influence. So that makes our relationship very different. Now, what has happened is, if you look at the last 10, 20 years, India is also growing, China is also growing. Our relationship vis-a-vis the balance vis-a-vis the world is changing. And naturally, we have to find the balance between India and China also, you know. So it's, in a sense, it's a very, I would say, dynamic situation. In a dynamic situation, how do you create an equilibrium? Because they are also dynamic, we are also dynamic. World is also dynamic, by the way. World does not stop still. So everything is moving, and yet we are trying to do in diplomacy what is very difficult in physics. How to create an equilibrium between really dynamically active forces. Now, one way of doing it is to reach a set of, sit, discuss, negotiate, reach an agreement with somebody and say, let us both agree to do this, let us both agree not to do that, let us agree to where we have to work together to do it in a certain way. That's how sensible people do it. What has happened for us with China in the last 4 years, even when we had reached an agreement on some issues, they decided for whatever reason not to observe those agreements. So it has created a problem. We don't make a secret of it. So that problem, in fact, today has led us in India to send thousands of soldiers to the border to defend our line of actual control. So I would say, to me, the best way of dealing with China is learning to compete with China, to build the national strength in India, to build the economic strength, the technology strength, the military strength, to create a young generation with that kind of skills and talent and understanding of the future world. That will enable us actually to deal with that China. Which brings me to your question. How do you create that generation? Because the answer is education. So I have really two broad observations where you're concerned. Number one, when you say we are going beyond Macaulay, how do we create an authentic Indian education system? The starting point is actually to take pride in our own culture. Because if you don't take pride in your culture, if you don't see what is good at home, you're not going to be rooted sufficiently to create that kind of value-based system. There can be very, very little things, It can be what we eat, what we speak, what we observe, what we revere, what we believe in. If we start running down our own traditions, if we start dismissing them, if we equate modernity and Western, I think we have a really big problem on our hands. And that unfortunately has happened to a great degree. So even, when we are looking at schooling, it's very important, we learn what is globally the best. But to learn globally the best, we should not throw away what is best at home. It is very important to absorb all those traditions and beliefs and thinking from our parents, from our elders. That is equally important. In terms of how do we adapt education to AI, I'm giving AI as an example. I think here it will have to be a much more intensive interaction between government, business and education. Because ultimately, government and business are going to lead the AI push in this country. But they can only do it if the education system is turning out people who are really familiar, competent, conversant with all the virtues and with the possibilities of something like AI. So we are heading, I would say even in this term, we are heading actually for a very, very big change. We are heading for a very big change in education. We are heading for a very big change in application of technology. In the last 10 years, 10 years ago, Aadhaar was there. But Aadhaar was not taken seriously. None of you used Aadhaar in any serious way for anything. Today, if you look that same Aadhaar, once you start applying that Aadhaar from your passport, your driving license, your bank account, your ration, if you are eligible for ration, your house. The entire governance system today runs on Aadhaar. So, government has to give leadership, business has to be a partner, but at the end of the day, we need that kind of education, and that is why I come back to you. We are competing with China. We need to see what is China doing in all of these fields, what other countries are doing. Prime Minister recently, in one of his interviews, he spoke about a new practice, which is actually very interesting. He said, if you bring any proposal to the cabinet, he said, please tell me along with that, what is the global best practice in that proposal? So if you want to do action policy A, please tell me in the world who else is doing what, similar to us, who is better, who is worse, what should be our reference point. So we have to create a system where our reference point is not our own, performance, but the world's best standards. And we have to, again I stress, we have to keep it rooted at home. That we need to be proud of our country, proud of our heritage, proud of our faith, proud of our languages, proud of our beliefs. If we don't inculcate that in young people, don't expect them then to take leadership position in the world.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir, for enriching us.